I was about to sign the papers that would hand everything over to my husband, the only inheritance my mother left me, when the notary placed his hand over mine and whispered, "Elena, I need to speak with you in private. What I'm about to tell you will change everything you believe you know about the man you're married to." Those words froze the blood in my veins. What secret could be so serious that it would stop the signing? Before we continue, I ask that you subscribe to our channel Woman and Her Stories. And if this story touches your heart, support us with a super thanks or by becoming a member of the community. It means the world to us. Thank you for being here. My name is Elena Vargas and I am 38 years old. For 6 years I believed I knew every corner of my husband's soul. I believed we were the kind of couple people pointed out with envy on the street. The kind of couple that faced everything together. But that Tuesday morning, sitting in front of a dark wooden desk in a notary office in the center of Madrid, I discovered I had been married to a complete stranger. Everything began 18 months before that day. My husband arrived home one Thursday night with a face I had never seen before. It was not exactly sadness. It was something deeper, darker. He sat at the kitchen table without taking off his coat, and looked at me in silence for almost a full minute. "Michael, you're scaring me. What happened?" "I went to the doctor today," he said finally. With that voice people have when they are about to release something that weighs tons. He told me he had been feeling tired for weeks. A tiredness that was not normal. It was not the tiredness of working too much or sleeping badly. It was something inside him that was fading away. The tests revealed that his liver was failing. Advanced scarring. Though Michael had never drunk more than usual. The doctor explained that there were cases like this, people without obvious risk factors who developed the condition silently over years. I took his hands across the table. They felt cold. What do we need to do? That was always me. That was my way of loving. I did not freeze. I did not cry first. First I asked, what do we need to do? The process was long and exhausting. Michael began treatment to slow the damage, but the doctors were clear from the beginning. Eventually he would need a transplant. His liver would not recover on its own. The waiting list for a deceased donor was endless. The doctors spoke of years, not months. I was a primary school teacher in a private school in Carabanchel. I did not earn much, but it was enough for us. What I did have was my mother's house, a 3-bedroom apartment in Leganés that she left me when she passed away 4 years earlier. It was the only thing I had left from her. I had kept it rented because I could not bear the idea of selling it, but it was still mine. It was my safety net, her memory made of bricks and walls. One night, while Michael slept after a treatment session that had left him without strength, I did the numbers. The cost of a private transplant in a specialized clinic was enormous. Public healthcare covered it, yes, but the waiting times could be fatal for someone in Michael's condition. There was an option, a clinic in Barcelona, with an accelerated transplant program. That had a waiting list of barely 4 months. The price was very high, but if I sold my mother's apartment, we could cover it. I made the decision without consulting him. Just as I had to save the man I loved, without giving him time to protest. Because when you love someone you do not wait for permission to save them. The next morning I told him while we were having breakfast. I am going to sell my mother's apartment to pay for the transplant in Barcelona. Michael set his coffee cup down on the table very slowly. Elena. No. That apartment is the only thing your mother left you. You cannot. It is just an apartment. You are my husband. He began to cry. It had been weeks since I had seen him cry since the initial diagnosis, but that day he cried without making a sound, with his eyes closed and his hands on the table, like someone receiving something he did not believe he deserved. I do not deserve it, he whispered. I do not deserve what you are doing for me. In that moment, I thought it was humility. Now I know it was guilt. The following weeks were a whirlwind of paperwork. I contacted a real estate agency. We appraised the apartment. Buyers appeared quickly because the market in that area was good. Everything was going to close on a specific date. That Tuesday. That Tuesday in the notary office. But before reaching that Tuesday, there were signs. Signs that I decided to ignore because I did not want to see them. The first was one Friday night, 3 months before the signing. Michael had gone out to buy something at the supermarket. He took more than an hour to return. When he arrived, he put the bags in the kitchen and went straight to the bathroom. I heard him open the faucet at the sink and stay in there for a long time. When he came out, his face looked strange, his eyes slightly red, as if he had been crying or had had a very intense conversation. Are you okay? Yes. I felt cold in the street, but it was not that cold outside. It was September. The second sign was one night when I woke up at 2 in the morning, and Michael's side of the bed was empty. I found him in the living room standing by the window, looking at the street wet with rain. He had the phone in his hand, but the screen was off. What are you doing here? He turned. He took a second too long to answer. I could not sleep. The discomfort. Michael had frequent discomfort. It was normal given his condition. But that night he had not mentioned anything all afternoon. Do you want me to prepare something for the pain? No, it is already passing. Go back to sleep. I went back to bed, but it took me a long time to close my eyes. The third sign was my sister, Valeria Castillo. Valeria never trusted Michael much. From the beginning she told me there was something about him that did not convince her, although she never knew how to explain exactly what. Over time she had learned to keep her reservations to herself, because she knew I did not want to hear them. But one Sunday, when she came to have lunch at our house, while Michael was taking a nap because the afternoons were very heavy for him, Valeria said something to me in the kitchen that stayed with me for days. Elena, are you sure you know everything about Michael? What do you mean? 2 weeks ago I saw him on the metro. On line 6. Getting off at Nuevos Ministerios. He was with a woman. They did not look like work colleagues. And how did they look? They looked like people who had important things to say to each other. They were very close, very much in their own world. When the train stopped, she stumbled and he held her by the arm. And they stayed like that, very close, talking in low voices. Valeria, Michael is sick. He has appointments with doctors, with specialists, with coordinators at the clinic in Barcelona. He was not wearing a white coat. Elena. She looked at me with that expression siblings have when they know you are in denial and do not want to push too hard. I know what I saw and I know you are going to sell Mom's apartment for him. I just wanted you to know. That conversation stuck with me like a splinter. I tried to remove it by telling myself that Valeria was exaggerating, that appearances could be deceiving, that Michael was a sick and loyal man. But the splinter remained there. 1 week before the signing, while Michael was at a medical checkup, I entered his home office to look for some sheets of paper. On the desk there was an open agenda. It was not the work agenda I knew. It was a small navy blue notebook with tight handwriting. I saw my name on one of the pages. And next to my name, some figures, the exact amount from the sale of the apartment. With a plus sign and other numbers beside it that I did not recognize. I closed it. I told myself that he was probably doing calculations for the transplant. I told myself it was normal for him to keep track of the finances. I told myself many things so I would not have to ask myself the question I really wanted to ask. That night, when Michael arrived, I tried to sleep peacefully. I could not. The next day I called a friend who worked as an administrator in a law firm, and asked her for a favor. I gave her Michael's name, and asked if there was any way to know if he had registered debts, embargoes, that kind of thing. She said she would try. She called me 3 days later, the Friday before the Tuesday of the signing. Elena. There are things that do not add up. Your husband has 3 personal loans that you have never mentioned. 1 with a bank, 2 with private lenders. The total exceeds €80,000. There is also an open judicial procedure from 2 years ago, something related to a limited company that no longer exists. I could not breathe. What kind of procedure? I do not have all the details. But it is not civil, it is criminal. I hung up the phone and sat on the sofa for a time I could not measure. €80,000 in debts. A criminal procedure. A company that no longer existed. The man I had been married to for 6 years, the man for whom I was selling my dead mother's apartment, was hiding secrets I had never imagined. That night I did not sleep. I spent it staring at the ceiling, listening to Michael's breathing beside me, and wondering who that person really was. Monday morning I made a decision. I was going to show up for the signing the next day. I was going to sit in front of the notary, and if nothing happened, if no more signs appeared, I would sign and accept that Michael's secrets were bad, but not enough to abandon a sick man. But something inside me told me that something was going to happen. Tuesday dawned gray. Madrid in November has that color of a city that seems to be thinking about something sad. I arrived at the notary office at 10:15, 15 minutes early. The secretary showed me to a small waiting room with 2 chairs upholstered in burgundy. Michael arrived 10 minutes later with his gray coat, and that paleness that had been settling on his face since the diagnosis. He greeted me with a kiss on the cheek. I noticed his hands were cold. The notary received us punctually. He was a man about 55 years old, slim, with thin-framed glasses, and a way of moving that transmitted the calm of someone who has handled thousands of complicated situations. His name was Fernando Alcantara. He explained the process. He pointed out the documents one by one. We reached the last page. The pen was already in my hand. And then the notary Fernando Alcantara placed his hand over my wrist. Mrs. Vargas, could you accompany me for a moment to my office? I need to speak with you about something before we sign. Michael frowned. Is there a problem with the documents? The documents are perfectly in order, the notary replied without looking at him. It is a matter I must handle with Mrs. Vargas in private. It is part of the protocol in transactions of this type. It was not true. It was no protocol. But he said it with such absolute calm that Michael could not contradict him. I stood up. I followed the notary down a hallway to his office. He closed the door. He looked directly into my eyes. Mrs. Vargas, what I am about to tell you is not easy. And before I do, I need you to know that what I am doing is not interfering in a private matter on a whim. I am doing it because I have witnessed similar situations and I cannot stand by with my arms crossed. What is happening? I know your husband. Not from this notary office, I know him from before. 4 years ago, your husband used a woman named Lucia to obtain a signature similar to the one you are about to make. That woman gave him her life savings, believing it was to save a business in crisis. The money disappeared. The business never existed. Lucia took 2 years to recover financially and emotionally. I do not know if she ever fully did. The world stopped around me. You are saying that my husband is a con man. I am saying that I know his history. I am saying that the woman I am talking about was my cousin. And when I saw the name on today's papers, I could not stay silent. Why did you not report this? Why did you not go to the police at the time? Lucia did not want to file a complaint. She was afraid. She was ashamed and Michael never gave her anything in writing that directly compromised him. He was very careful. He always had been. My hands trembled on my knees. There is something more you should know. The notary continued. Yesterday, while reviewing the property records as part of the standard process, I found something. The company linked to the criminal procedure your husband has opened did not close on its own. The authorities closed it for money laundering. The procedure has been stalled for 2 years because the investigated parties cooperated partially and agreed to a resolution. But the file remains open, it is not archived. And if your name appears linked to a transfer of that money, even indirectly, you could find yourself involved. I felt nauseous. My name could be involved. It would depend on how the case was handled. But yes, it was a real risk. I remained silent for what seemed like a full minute, but it was probably 10 seconds. Is there anything else? He hesitated. The woman they saw you with on the metro. He mentioned at the end as if he already knew that I knew about it. She is not an acquaintance. He has been with her for more than a year. Her name is Sophia. She has an apartment in Arganzuela registered in both their names, although you probably do not know about it. I knew it. Also, when I reviewed the documents related to the criminal procedure, it came up in the records. The door to the office seemed very far away when I stood up. Still, I reached it. When I entered the room again where Michael was waiting for me, I looked at him in a different way. Not with anger yet. With that strange look you have when you see someone familiar and suddenly no longer recognize them. Like when as a child I saw a photo of my mother from when she was 20, and it took me a moment to realize who it was. I need you to explain something to me, I said. And I ask you not to lie to me because I no longer have patience for lies. Michael crossed his arms. What did that man tell you? He told me enough, but I want to hear it from you. What is the company for which you have an open criminal procedure? His face changed. Subtle, but unmistakable. That is a long and complicated story that has nothing to do with us. An apartment in Arganzuela. Michael, in your name and in the name of a woman named Sophia. He stood up from the chair. Elena, let me explain. Explain. That was the only thing I said. Without shouting, with a calm that surprised even me, Michael sat down again. He passed a hand over his face and began to speak. Sophia and I have been together for a while. It is not what it seems, it is complicated. I met her at a time when things between us were not good. And when things were not good between us, I thought we were fine. For you they were fine. For me it was different. The affair and the company. That was a miscalculation. There were partners who made decisions I did not approve of. I only lent my name. I never knew exactly what they were doing. And the debts? Silence. The debts, Michael, are manageable. With the money from the apartment. I stopped there. With the money from the apartment, I repeated. The money from my mother's apartment, that you were going to use to pay for the transplant. The transplant is real, Elena. I am sick. That is true. And the money was going to be only for the transplant. He did not answer immediately. And in that silence I found the answer I needed. The debts too. I said in a low voice. You were going to use my mother's money to pay your debts. And meanwhile, you had another woman with an apartment in both names. Elena. Listen to me. She knows you are sick. Yes. And why did she not sell something to help you? More silence. Because she has nothing, he said finally. Because Sophia also has no resources. So you used me because I did have something you could take. It was not like that. How was it then? He began to tell me that he loved me, that what happened with Sophia did not mean what I thought, that the debts could be resolved, that he was going to do things right. The words mixed in his mouth with something that sounded like desperation, although I no longer knew if that desperation was genuine or another tool of manipulation. I stood up. Elena, please, do not do this to me. I am sick. Michael, I know you are sick. And I am sorry, truly sorry, but I am not responsible for what is happening to you. And I will no longer be responsible for what happens to you from now on. You are going to abandon me like this. You abandoned me long before when you decided to lie to me. When you decided to have another parallel life, when you decided that my inheritance was a resource available to fix your mistakes. My voice trembled at the end of that last sentence. But I remained standing. I left that room without signing. I told the notary Fernando that we were not going to proceed. He looked at me with an expression that was not pity, but something more like respect. I nodded. He nodded too. The way home I took by metro. I remembered almost nothing of the journey. I arrived, sat on the sofa, and stayed looking at the balcony for a long time without thinking about anything specific. I called Valeria. I did not tell her everything, only that I had not signed, that she was right, that I needed time. Valeria did not say I told you so. Valeria only said, I am in the car. Do you want me to come over? Yes, I said, please. During the following weeks, Michael tried to contact me every day. Messages, calls from numbers I did not recognize because I had blocked his. Notes he slipped under the door at first, before I changed the lock. All of them said variations of the same thing. That he loved me. That he was sorry. That he was going to die without my help. I did not answer any. I began the separation procedures with a lawyer that Valeria recommended to me. During that process, more things came to light. Michael had a debt with the tax authorities that I knew nothing about. The criminal procedure advanced and his name appeared formally mentioned in the proceedings. The lawyer helped me document that I had had no participation in his businesses, that my finances had always been completely separate from his. My mother's apartment remained mine. 4 months after that Tuesday in the notary office, I received a message from Sophia. I do not know how she got my number. The message was short. It said she needed to talk to me, that there were things I deserved to know, that she was not asking for anything, she just wanted to tell me. I hesitated for 2 days. Then I replied yes. We met in a cafe in Lava Peas one Wednesday afternoon. She arrived before me. She was a slim woman about 40 years old with dark hair tied back, and the expression of someone who had slept badly for many nights in a row. She extended her hand when I sat down. I shook it. Before you say anything, she said, I need you to know that I was also one of his victims. I know that does not change what happened, but it is the truth. She told me she met Michael 3 years ago in a professional training course. Michael presented himself as an independent businessman. He told her he had a consulting company and was in a phase of expansion. He spoke to her of a prosperous life, of projects, of stability. He did not tell her he was married until months later. And when he did, he assured her that the marriage was a formality. That we were separated in fact, although not in law. The apartment we put in both names when I sold the car and savings I had. He contributed something too, but less than what he said he would put. Later it turned out that money was part of a loan he had not declared. Did you know about his illness from the beginning? Yes. He told me. He also told me he had a possible donor, a distant relative, and that when the transplant matter was resolved we were going to rebuild our life together without ties. I remained very still. A distant relative, I repeated. It took me a moment to understand that he meant me. When I understood, I demanded that he tell you the truth, that it was not fair, that you could not make that decision without knowing what you were really supporting. It was the biggest argument we ever had. He told me that after the transplant he would fix everything, that you were too good a person for this to matter so much to you, that you would end up forgiving. There are people who believe that the kindness of others is an inexhaustible resource, that they can keep extracting without consequences. Michael was that kind of person. Sophia then took a folder out of her bag. It had documentation I had not seen. Screenshots of conversations, an email in which Michael described with a coldness that turned my stomach how he had known other women before me, following a similar pattern, not as elaborate, but with the same underlying logic. Find someone with resources. Build trust. Create an urgent need. Obtain what he needed. Before Lucia, the notary's cousin, there was another, a woman in Zaragoza whose name was only Patricia. To Patricia, he had asked to guarantee a personal loan that he then did not pay. Patricia carried the debt for years. She could never prove it judicially because the papers were in her name. Michael collected people who trusted too much. He studied them. He chose them carefully. Looked for someone with something to give. And with enough damaged self-love, not to dare set limits. But this time, something failed in his calculation. This time, the notary knew his cousin Lucia. Sophia looked at me with eyes where there was no longer rage or love, only the exhaustion of someone who had carried too long something that was not hers. I left him when I found out about the apartment linked to the procedure, she said. It made no sense to continue, but I carried for a long time the guilt of not having warned you earlier, of having been part of something that hurt you without wanting to. You do not have to apologize to me, I said. You were also deceived. I gave her reason when I stood up, not because I wanted to be generous, but because it was the truth. And the truth does not need to be adorned. I walked home that afternoon. It took me more than half an hour. Madrid was lit with the first lights of winter. Those orange streetlights that reflect on the wet asphalt and make the city seem softer than it is. I thought about my mother. I thought about my mother's hand signing the papers for that apartment so many years ago. I thought that her inheritance was still mine. That no one had taken it from me. That I myself had saved it. Although I did not know it at that moment. The separation became final 5 months later. Michael did not put up difficulties. I think he understood there was nothing left to negotiate. I learned through his lawyer that he had managed to get on the public transplant list, and that he continued with treatment. I did not ask more. I did not need to know. There are people who want to know if the one who hurt them is well or not. I discovered that what I wanted to know was if I was well, and I built that answer little by little. I began therapy with a psychologist who worked near my school. The first sessions were difficult. I had to dismantle many things I believed about myself. The idea that loving means sacrificing everything. The idea that setting limits is abandonment. The idea that the love that hurts the most is the most real. None of those things was true. 2 years after that gray Tuesday in the notary office, I can sit on the balcony of my apartment to drink my morning coffee and feel something that for a long time I forgot existed. Peace. Not the peace of someone who no longer has problems, but the peace of someone who has learned to trust herself to face them. My mother's apartment I still have rented. Sometimes I think about going to see it. About walking through the rooms. And remembering how her kitchen smelled. I have not been able to yet, but it no longer seems urgent. I already know it will still be there when I am ready. There is one thing I repeat to myself. Whenever doubt visits me, when I ask myself if I made the right decision, if I should have signed, if I should have stayed silent and saved a sick man even though he had lied to me, I repeat to myself that I did not enter that marriage to be anyone's rescue plan. I entered to build something real with someone real. And when I discovered that what was in front of me was neither real nor honest, choosing myself was not selfishness. It was the least I owed myself. We all deserve that. We deserve someone who does not study us to know how to take advantage of us. Someone who chooses us not for what we have, but for who we are. Someone with whom we do not have to ask ourselves at 2 a.m. while looking at the ceiling, if what we have is real. And if ever in your life a voice tells you that something does not fit, that there is something that does not add up even though you do not know exactly what, listen to it. That voice is not being unfair to anyone. That voice is taking care of you. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.